Hey y'all, Jane Corley with Pic Visions here. Thanks for joining me. Today we're going to learn all about how to get associated with a new Photoshop workspace. If it's your first time here, welcome. Make sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell so that you can be notified every time a new video is uploaded. Let's get started. First of all, make sure that you have Photoshop opened. Make sure to open a new document. As you see, I have a transparent background as my canvas setting. Once you get this document opened, you can notice a few things just to get associated with the workspace here that's already set up. This workspace in Photoshop is called the Photoshop Window Essentials. Window, Workspace, Essentials, which as you can see here is the default. Now, you see all these other options below. You can add additional options such as actions, brushes and brush presets. You can build your histogram and all these other options down here. Now, workspace toolbars, you might be wondering, what am I talking about? Your workspace toolbar is listed and located right here where it says history and properties. So you can click on brush and your brush presets and your brush toolbar will open. If you see this small double arrow window, it will collapse that additional window in this toolbar. You can really customize this workspace to fit exactly what you need to do while you're working on your projects. Let's continue. Coming up here to where it says Essentials, if you customize your workspace, once you create a workspace, you can actually name this workspace in New Workspace. So let's get into a little bit more. Now that you have your workspace all set up, what does all of this mean? What does all of this mean? I'll go over it briefly for us in this tutorial. History is, of course, just the history of what you have done on your project. So say we've made a real big mess and we're doing all this, and I want to go back and say, well, I really don't like that last squiggle. What you can do is see where it populated the brush movements I made. Every time I clicked, a new brush tool mark came up in this toolbar, in the history toolbar. If I don't like that last mark that I made, I can check this small box here and actually hit delete, and it'll take that last brush movement out. This comes in handy when you've got a long list of adjustments and you just want to go back and make small changes to something you may have done 10, 12, 15, 20 moves ago. So if you need to make those adjustments, you can always click on these little boxes next to those selected movements and make that one adjustment. Make that one change to your history, the history of what you've been working on. So let's collapse that window. Another way to jump back, to go back, to edit undo is Control-Alt or Control-Z. That will take you back one movement. Control-Alt-Z will continue taking you back movements. It will continue taking you back these history moves. As you see, these are now grayed out because they've been undone. They've been taken out of the history. Now, to bring those marks back, you can hit Control-Shift-Z or Command-Shift-Z to bring those moves back. You see they repopulated here in the history window. You got all your squiggles here. See, they've populated here in the history window. Control-Alt-Z will remove those marks. Control or Command-Shift-Z will bring those marks back. It's a step forward and a step backwards process. Here you have your color swatches, colors to choose from. You can see I've got this purple plum color selected. If I wanted to make an adjustment to that, wanted to put more red, I could do that. Wanted to put more green, could do that. Wanted to put more blue, I could do that and make adjustments this way. Up here next to the color tab, you have a swatches option. That swatch option will give you preset color adjustments. Let's select this pinkish color here, and then you can always make adjustments. You also have this rainbow toolbar here, and I don't know if y'all can see it, but where it has a white swatch and a black swatch over here, your eyedropper will actually pop up so that you can make that selection. Click to sample colors, you see the tab. If you need an absolute white or an absolute black, clicking on those two swatches over on the side will give you an absolute white and an absolute black. You can come in here and do what you need to do, find whatever colors you need to find. Another way to do that is to find these two color swatches you see down here on the corner. We'll select the one on top. You see how they're layered on top of one another? This on top color, kind of a browny gold color. The color picker, foreground color. On top is the foreground color, in the back tucked behind is the background color. Coming back to this window workspace. Adjustments, you've got brightness and contrast, adjustment layer. Levels, adjustment layer. Curves, exposure, vibrance. Hue and saturation, color balance, black and white, photo filters, channel fixers, channel mixers, color lookup, invert selections, posterize, thresholds, selective color, and gradient map. So just for the sake of what we're going to be doing here in Photoshop for now, black and white through brightness are really the only ones that we're going to deal with. I'll go through in another video really full-fledged in all of these. Moving down, you have your layers tab. This is, in my opinion, the mainframe for what your project work is going to be. Alright y'all, let's talk about layers. A brief intro to layers. I'll get more into it in another tutorial, but just so we know, just kind of a Reader's Digest, if you will, about layers. Think of layers like you would a piece of pizza. Pizza, you make it with the crust, you put the sauce on top, you put the cheese on top, you put the pepperoni, you put the pineapple, that's my jam, and put it in the oven. Think of all those different pieces of the pizza to build a delicious pizza as layers. If you put the sauce on top of the bread layer, you can't see the bread layer underneath the sauce. Or if you like your sauce a little thinner, you can see slightly through that layer. That is called opacity. Opacity in Photoshop. Opacity. Once you put the cheese on top, you know, the cheese is kind of crisscrossed and sprinkled on top, so you might be able to see a little sauce underneath, and you might still be able to see a little bit of that bread underneath with a lower opacity sauce. Then you put the pepperoni on top. Pepperoni is not see-through, so whatever it covers covers completely. Once you put the pineapple on top of that, maybe a little extra cheese to mesh it all together. There's a lot of places on this now pizza that you cannot see through. You cannot see the bread through. You can't even see the box that the pizza is in through. So let me show you on Photoshop exactly what we're talking about to give you a little visual. So for layers, I'm just going to create a new project and we'll get started. We'll take whatever it was going to give us and we'll get started. So this crosshatch, crisscross, checkerboard, whatever you want to call it, is a blank slate. Think of that like the pizza box. This layer over here, as you can see, it says layer 1. I'm going to name it box, just for the sake of our pizza metaphor. These things down here, you will see folder, and you will see new layer. This new layer, as you see, puts it above. So think of this like the bread. Let's go over to our gradient tool, select gradient, and create a black and white gradient across the way. That's going to give us the bread of the pizza. We'll rename that bread. Now, pizzas are round, right? So let's come up here to our marquee tool and we'll create a round marquee. Now, pretend this is like our pizza crust. We don't want this selection made. We want all this selection made. So what you can do is hit Control or Command, Shift, and the letter I for invert. I as in indigo or I as in invert. And it will make the selection of what the inverse selection of that elliptical marquee tool is, and then too easy, just hit delete. So now, with the sake of our metaphor of the pizza in the box, you got the box and you got the bread. And next layer is going to be the sauce. So we'll come down here, create a new layer. And hit and label it sauce. Now, sauce, we'll just make the sauce white. Using your bracket tools, we'll make the brush bigger. And we'll select white. See how that goes over it, like so? Now, as we talked about opacity, you see up here where it says opacity 100%? That means it's going to 100% be the most capable brush, most coverage in a brush. Now, if you make those and say, well, I kind of want it to be a little see-through. I want the opacity to be a little lower. Make sure you have this layer selected. You can come over here within your Layers tab to Opacity and make adjustments to that layer. So your opacity can be a little bit lower. See how the adjustments are made? See how it gets, can't even see it now on 0%. You can see it a little bit on 25%, 26%, 50%, it's a little bit darker, and then 100% it's full coverage like so. So let's take it to 50%. So moving on. We're going to create another layer, and we're going to call this bad boy cheese. We're going to hit X so that we now move from white to black. We'll make our brush a little bit smaller, and we're making cheese. I know this is really rough, y'all, but just for the sake of briefly explaining layers, we'll go through there. So cheese, yay, cheese. Now, this cheese, you see, is not a solid black. We have our opacity still set at 50%. So, we need to make an adjustment. We'll back out with the Command or Control-Alt-Z, back all the way out. We'll hit Enter, 100%, hit Enter again, or Return. Make our brush a little smaller. And now you're painting with a heavier or a harder brush. Now, you kind of see how this looks a little bit out of focus, a little bit, just a little blurry, if you will. It's because of the type of brush we're using. Up here, you can change the size and hardness of your brush, or if you would just like your brush to make certain marks and strokes a little harder, you can choose a brush like this, and then of course you can scroll all the way down and get a variety of different brushes to use. So as you can see, this one is a harder brush than that one. This one has no blur on the edges, if you will. It's just a harder brush, like so. All right, so moving on with cheese, you see how this is now on top of the sauce, which is on top of the bread, which is on top of the box. Create another layer. We're going to call this pep for pepperoni. So pepperoni, we're going to get a little bit more complicated. We're going to change our color to red like pepperoni, and we'll create some peps. So hit B for brush to change off the eraser tool, like so. You see how it goes over the cheese layer, over the bread layer, and over the box layer. Now, why would you need to make these adjustments? Why would you need to have the layers? Why? Just why? This is going to enable you to make adjustments to certain layers. Make adjustments to certain parts of the image without destructing other parts of the image. So, say we wanted to, so if you wanted to move this pepperoni around, what you could do is go to your move tool, or hit V for the move tool, and it's only going to move these pepperonis. It's not going to move everything underneath, like so. So M for marquee, deselect. Okay? Now, same thing if you wanted to work with layers underneath. If you wanted to create a little pattern on the edge of your bread layer, for whatever reason, we're going to hit E for eraser just to make a quick selection. You see it only makes adjustments to the bread. It doesn't make any selections or change the makeup of anything other than the bread. So the cheese, the sauce, everything like that is still going to stay the same, just the bread is going to make an adjustment. Same with like if you just wanted to cut a hole in the pepperonis. Let's go to E for eraser, cut a hole in the pepperonis, like so. It's only going to make adjustments to the pepperonis. You see the cheese and the sauce and the bread and everything underneath. It's only going to make selections and adjustments to the layers that you are on. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Tune in next time for more information about how to use Photoshop. Adobe Photoshop is a great tool for photographers, illustrators, animators alike. In these tutorials, we're going to go over some quick tips and tricks about how to become a better post-production artist. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Jane Corley with Pic Visions. Make sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get all the notifications every time a new video is uploaded. Thanks for joining me, and see you next time.